Hi there, this is Paul Thomson from Spitfire Audio. Very excited today to be able to show you the Spitfire Symphonic Brass library. This is a fantastically detailed orchestral brass library. It has all of the BML content for our brass libraries so far, consolidated into one package with close, tree and ambient mics, so the most commonly requested mics. And then I'm just going to jump straight in and start playing, and so you can hear, and as we go through we'll talk about some of the controls. So we're opening up with the 6 horns section, and I'm going to play the performance legato. So you'll hear there it's monophonic when I try to play a chord at the end. Let's jump into the spanner view. So what you're looking at here is the Easy Mix view. You've got the basic controls up here. We've loaded from the core folder. So what we've got is a curated selection of the articulations, the most commonly used stuff on the front page. Later we'll go into the advanced folder and I'll show you where the rest of the stuff is. So if we look at the spanner view, you'll see that we've got a key thing here, our mic mix. You'll see that there's a little eye, and this is contextual help, which gives you information on every single part of the UI and has a full control system for if you don't want to show any more help bubbles and all that kind of stuff. You can set all of that there. Let's jump to the staccatos to have a listen to the mics. So we're going to listen to the close mics first. They sound like this. And then if we listen to the tree, and then the ambient mics. So you get the idea, and what you can really do is you can dial in exactly the sound that you want. So it's very, very flexible, just moving the sliders around, changing the balance of the individual sounds. What I tend to do quite often is I'll write with the tree mics, and then when I get to kind of working out the sound of the overall arrangement or how you want it, we tend to think of it as a kind of aperture. So whether you want a very tight aperture or quite a wide aperture, you can adjust the mic settings, and then you can bounce the tracks, and that's especially useful if you're on a system with a slightly reduced performance. You can just freeze the tracks like in Logic or bounce tracks down in Audio to free up system resources for the rest of your arrangement. So having a quick flick through the longs. Now you'll hear that we've got quite a tight release on this. If I push the release slider right up to the other side, then you get a much slower release, and there's obviously a position, kind of compromised position somewhere in the middle. So if we slide the release slider right up to the end, so it's a much longer release, and it also gives you the advantage of, being able to lift your fingers off the keys and play the next chord, and just give you a slightly smoother performance overall. So let's have a look at our different length shorts. So we've got our marcatos, we've got our tenutos, and our staccatos. So you can hear it's got a nice wide dynamic range, but also there's a useful function here with the articulations release triggers. So we've got no short articulation release trigger. That means it's like a one shot, just plays all the way through. Timed shorts. Now, that's the full length. If I let go early, you'll hear that we get the note cuts off and we get the release trigger. So that's quite useful as well. Enables you to shorten or lengthen the notes. We have another way of doing that using the time machine, which I'll show you later on some of the more advanced patches. So we've had a listen to the short notes. We've got multi-tongues in the library, and the multi-tongues are controlled partly by the variation slider and partly by how heavily you play. So let's go to the left-hand side of variation is double tongues. Now when I play heavy, above 64, I get a longer end, and when I play light, I get a tight end. So that's the double tongues, and then in the middle we have the triples, And then at the top end, we have the quads, which is really great. And obviously you're hearing 6 horns at the moment playing those doubles. Rips and falls. Obviously with our variation slider again, we've got a variation faster or longer. So you get the idea. Now, for comparison, let's just jump straight to the horns A2. And let's have a look at these. So we'll put a little mix up, add a bit of close mic in again. And then if we just quickly go to the same patch and our variations. So you can hear there, as you have fewer players, you get a slightly tighter sound. Let's have a listen to our legatos. And then if we go for our polyphonic longs, very nice. I'm going to put the release triggers up a bit. Very nice kind of choral sound. So that's quite beautiful. And then as you ride the mod wheel up, you get a much harder sound. And it's always useful to remember that you've got to ride the mod wheel for a musical performance. Our stopped. It's a nice sound. And that's with the hand inside the bell. That's hand stopping the instrument. We've got our staccatos. We've got our mid-length tenutos. I'm going to turn the RTs off so you hear the full one shot. And then full tilt, our marcatos. Also, in here we've got our trills. Quite a useful sound. And obviously these are mod wheel. So you've got dynamic control of those as well. And then finally, let's listen to our solo horn. And I'm going to switch back again to the legato. Very beautiful sound. And with our longs here, even though the bottom dynamic, nice choral sound again. Just going to put the releases up. And you've got a very clear and very smooth transition from the bottom to the top. So that's very useful. Our staccatos. And then again, tenutos. And trills. Great stuff. Love a horn trill. And again, if we have a quick listen to our different mics. Now, one thing which for me, brass is all about the room. So I would never just use the close mic and add a load of reverb. It just doesn't sound the same. If you get that, that is a great way to add definition. But the timbral nature of that sound is very, very different from the sound as it projects into the hall. Very, very different, totally different tonal balance for me. So whereas the close mic is incredibly useful for adding definition and punch in some ways to the sound, the real sound of a brass instrument is the room that it's resonating in and the effect that that has on the instrument and on the player's lips as well. And the ambient mic. So looking at all three, you can hear there's a huge difference as you start combining the different mic perspectives. And so that's where the real kind of incredible usefulness of this library is, in my opinion. We have incredible players here in the UK. And then when you combine their gift with such a beautiful room to record in, everything recorded to tape, you know, you really kind of, every little bit and every part of the signal chain, we try and make it as good as possible so that when you get to the end product, all of those little incremental benefits add up. So that's the solo horn. Now we're going to jump to the trumpet. So let's start with the trumpets A6. I'm going to try and keep it snappy. So you can see that our mod wheel is controlling both the long and the short dynamics with the performance legato. And we're only hearing the tree as well. So let's put in the close. It's sounding quite loud. Let's put in the close. I'm just going to jump into the advanced folder and look in the individual articulations. And then if we jump into the trumpets A6, you'll see that we also have this fanfare patch, which is incredibly useful. So here we have the Fanfare Sculptor. There's a separate YouTube tutorial on how to use this. Usually I play it in and then tweak the MIDI. That's when it's most useful, but I'll just busk something quickly. So very, very useful little extra patch there. So going back, where were we? Trumpets A6. Going back to the kind of core selection. So this is, as with all of these kind of base level, you know, the kind of root level instruments, these are a curated selection of the sounds that we think are the most used, most useful for each instrument. So you've got your staccatos, tenutos, marcatos, and then cuivre. Very, very brassy sound. You've got your longs. Which gives you a nice smooth swell on the mod wheel between the different dynamics. Obviously the trumpet A6 is kind of focused at the higher end. So if you want to play some nice soft stuff, but still with a trumpet section, then that's where we turn to trumpets A2. So let's start by looking at the longs. I'm going to pull the dynamics and vibrite down. So you can hear there you've got a huge amount of dynamic control. We've got our muted. Really, really lovely stuff. Let's jump to the staccato. And you can hear that the sound is a lot more focused when you've only got 2 players as opposed to 6. And then using the Easy Mix slider, we can of course jump between close and a much more distant sound, or somewhere in between. So that's a very useful and simple tool to use there in the middle. Tenutos, marcatos, and our multi-tongues. We've also got trills, mod wheel control. And then you've got further articulations within the advanced folder, but we'll look at an example of that in a minute. So let's just quickly load the solo trumpet. And again, we'll start with the legato. So you can hear there our vibrato control, nice smooth control there between the vibrato and the dynamic control. Let's switch to our longs. We can look at our muted. Nice. And let's look at our staccatos. Now, obviously with our staccatos, nice focused sound, very dynamic again. And with our double tongue, triple and quad. So let's look at our trombones next, and I'm going to stick with the solo for now. We'll look at the solo tenor. And we'll go back to our spanner view. Get a nice mix up. So some slightly longer releases. I'm going to pull the module right down, and we're going to go for our choral brass sound. So I'm playing really, really softly, but I'm getting, it's great for those kind of textural, filling in the middle bits. Nice, gentle, soft sound with the trombones. Trombones, the horns are very good at it. Euphonium, and also you can get it on some other instruments. We'll come to that later. So if we swell up, now you'll hear there that we're really going for it. We're going full tilt. So you've got a nice wide dynamic again here with the mutes. Great stuff. We've got our staccatos. Again, you really do get a nice bite on these when you play hard. We've got our tenutos and our marcatos. So it's pretty nice, pretty chunky there. Let's contrast that with the bass bone solo. And let's have a roughly the same mix up, something like that. And I'm going to turn off the articulation so we hear the full one shots. Now, very, very different, and I would say slightly chocolatier, if that was a word. Really fatter and slightly looser sound. Interestingly, now if we flick back to the staccato, you'll hear that within the pedal notes, and as you go from the pedals to the real instrument, you do get a timbral change. That's what happens in real life. So it makes much more sense to us to, if we listen to some nice loud longs. You can hear it changing. And the power changing as well, depending on what note you're playing, and that's just the physics of the trombone. It's slightly different on the tenor and on the bass, which is nice and interesting. But you do get this lovely cuivre. And that's great as well. That's a cuivre, very brassy sound, and that's just a mouth kind of alteration in the embouchure of the player. So let's go back to our staccatos. So we've got some really good stuff in here. Now let's contrast that with our A2 sections, and let's again look at the marcatos. Roughly the same mix. So much fatter and more powerful sound. And let's go for our legato again. And if we have a look at our cuivres, nice stuff. We've got our longs, and if I pull the dynamic, the mod wheel right down, and you get pull the vibrato down as well. Really lovely, lovely soft sound. We've got our multi-tongues on here. Again, same kind of thing with the... And we've got our rips and falls. So that gives you an idea of the bass bones there too. And the tenors, again, very similar. I'm just going to leave it on tree for now. Just check out the staccatos. So there's an important tonal difference between the tenors and the basses, and very useful and nice to stack up as well, just for fun. Let's whack in the basses, put them both on staccato, and blow the speakers. So it's pretty nice and punchy. So jumping back, we've had a quick look at our bones. Contrabass bone, one of my favourite instruments. And let's get this bad boy up. So just using the tree again, staccatos. Lovely stuff. Let's turn this bit off. Tenutos and our marcatos. So a really, really fat sound this is. Our longs, again, you can do soft choral. Or you can, let's put a little bit of a mix on it. Or you can get... And again, you're hearing the timbral change as you go down through the notes into the pedal range. Important to remember when writing for the contrabass trombone, not to, hold a note down forever, because at the loudest dynamic, at the lowest, most powerful FFFF, you can get a full set of lungs will last about 1.5 seconds. So just something to bear in mind when you're chanting it out, so that you don't get the players rolling their eyes when they see long lines of footballs. So we go back to our staccatos with this mix. So you can hear there, you've got a great sound. And also we've got our stopped, muted. So again, lovely sound. Now, leading us on, let's jump to the tuba. That's a logical next step, I guess, from the contrabass bone. So, useful to have a think about the mics on the tuba. Let me compare them for you. So let's listen to just the close, and then with the tree. Now, what I quite like, here's the ambient. It's very, very interesting how the room is being resonated by this instrument. Now, this is actually quite a useful instrument, and the contrabass tuba even more so, for just putting a little bit of extra bass end. Just think of it as a kind of subby bass that you can slot underneath some of your impacts. And it's almost not really about the direct sound. You don't necessarily, it's something you kind of almost feel more than you hear. Let's quickly compare that to the contrabass, and then I'll come back to the tuba. So with the contrabass, this is just the tree. So you get the idea, and again, looking at the ambient as well. Really useful kind of sound in there. So let's go back to the tuba, and we've got a lovely legato. And then we've got obviously our nice longs that we can use a kind of choral and get a really dense low sound there. You've got a muted stopped sound. Now that's an interesting sound, not a sound that you hear very often, muted tuba, but it does sound great. And then we've got our usual three. With a nice wide dynamic range. With the tuba, the contrabass tuba, I mean, we've, again, if you have a quick listen to the longs here, and I'll pull the mod roll right down. So that's an interesting use for the contrabass tuba as well. And it kind of roars as well, but it doesn't roar as much as this cimbasso. Cimbasso, again, one of my favorite instruments. Now let me just quickly, I'm going to switch to the mic view, set up a mix, and you'll notice that I've pulled everything down slightly. Here's the cimbasso. So, cimbasso can play quietly. And that's a lovely sound, but when it really wants to roar, and you'll hear that as you get to the very, very bottom, it gets slightly weaker, but in that very kind of sweet spot in the middle, that is extraordinary. And you'll notice with your rips and falls, you'll notice that the rip obviously sounds different because of the different playing mechanism. It's very different from the trombone, but a useful alternative. Now, you might ask, what happens with two cimbassi? Well, when you're standing next to a cimbasso player, a really good one, and they start wailing on it, then you get that kind of fight or flight reaction, and flight, in fact, being the operative word. Run as fast and as hard as possible to get away from it. It's just like an extraordinary, it's like being battered by something. And with two, it doesn't necessarily get much louder, but it does get thicker. So check this out. So what we've got here with all the incredible, with all the incredible kind of harmonics and rubbing together, and the kind of random craziness that's going on with the resonance around the hall, you've got a really fat sound. So let's check out the advanced folder. So as I said before, we've got extended articulations in here. So if we take the tenor bones A2 as an example, so we've got core techniques, and this gives us our cuivre, 3 shorts. Let's go to our decorations, gives us some glissandi effects, things like that. We've got our rips and falls in there. And then let's check out, for example, horns A2. You've got your longs, cuivre, you've got your stopped here. Now, here's something interesting. So let's play through a couple of these because we didn't hear this before. So you've got your stopped sound, but what have we got in the decorative palette? We've got a few nice extra goodies as well. Flutters. And we've got bells up stuff. Bells up, it sounds really, really good. Slightly longer, much longer, and the longest. So those are your bells up articulations. And again, those are in the extended technique. So you can see from the site all of the different articulations that are included, but we've got, we've tried to make it as simple as possible to use. So most of the kind of general use stuff is on the root level version of the instrument. And then if you want to check out some of the more extended stuff, then this is the place to kind of find it. Now, I mentioned before we had our we've got our individual articulations. So within here, you can easily see every single patch just on its own. And those can be loaded up. It's another way of loading things up. But within our other patches section, we've got some really useful stuff: economic, light resources, and then time machine. And I'm going to show you using horns A2, the time machine patch, because it's got something that's very useful. I referred to it earlier. It's a way of controlling the length of short notes. So if we have our, let's say, our normal staccato, I'm going to turn down here the bells up stuff off so it doesn't load up. Should shorten our load time slightly. effect and those. I only really want to play the staccato. So you can see here we've got a stretch control. In the middle, it's the normal length. Fully left, it's longer. Fully right, it's shorter. So you could go, or you get the idea. It's quite clumsy doing it with the mouse. I quite like to sometimes put this on a slider and then play. Also, I'm playing left-handed, which never helps with me, slightly cack-handed. And then play while I'm adjusting the stretch control. It gives you a bit more musicality, I guess. You've got more control, more flexibility with your short notes, and that always helps as well. So that is a quick look at the Spitfire Symphonic Brass Library. I hope you've enjoyed having a quick overview of this. It's got some amazing stuff in. As I said, it's a full functionality of what was the existing BML brass, with a ton of stuff that we recorded for Volume 2. We've consolidated it into a single library with your CTA mics in this version of the library. And this is going to make it much easier for us to update stuff and add in content if everybody's using one single version of the library as opposed to the multiple modular thing. It makes it easier for us to keep updating things, to fix any little problems that might creep in, and to add new content. So we've got one Symphonic Brass library. So I hope you enjoyed that walkthrough. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.